sort of a gentleman farm, so I've always had my hands in the dirt and working with things. As I guess it was in, yeah, I guess high school one summer, I worked for a local farmer who still used horses, and I drove team for him and whatnot. And then I think one of the big influences in organizing, introducing me to the organic thing was when I attended the meeting school, a small Quaker school in Rindge, New Hampshire. There was certainly some, it was not all organic. We had one faculty member who was very much into natural foods and whatnot, and another faculty member who had graduated from Cornell, who sort of ran the farm, and he, I think, was certainly feeling, as things in the 1960s, that you know, that we'd solved a lot of things with the chemicals and this and that and the other thing. So he was very much into the modern ideas on that. And I was exposed to both of these ideas, and I think this Quaker influence will carry through through my relationship to NOFA and everything else that I've done. I was not Quaker before this, but I certainly found that that's where I was. Actually, I attended Cornell College of Agriculture in 1962. I matriculated there, and this was, I think, on the introduction from, or that where else can you get a Ivy League education at a land grant school price? And Cornell was unique in that it was the Cornell College of Agriculture at Cornell, and true to its thing, it's very good. There was a time when my interests were in homesteading, and involved with alternative lifestyles, whole earth catalog, many other things of that sort. And Cornell was not teaching organic agriculture. In fact, I think it was Rachel Carson was a dirty word. Get big or get out was the theme in many of these things, and yet I kept to gather what I could in a general broad education. I think the best course, or the course that probably spoke closest to organic agriculture at that time was horticultural, no, not horticulture, agronomy course. And I think some of the other professors, he was an older professor about to retire, and I think the other people sort of said, well, this is farming in the 30s, as they called his course. But he was talking about crop rotation and organic matter and everything else that was in there, and he did not buy into all the, but we did get into, you know, the NPK and other things, but these other factors were there, and it was nice to see that. I took 1 year at Cornell and then decided, I had to do a work, sort of a work study some point. And so I took actually a whole year off and worked for Justin Brand, who was an organic farmer up in Middlebury, Vermont. And that would have been in 1963, 64. And that was certainly eye-opening. It was connected, got the connection through the other faculty at meeting school who was into organic ideas and gardening. And so I was introduced to the Soil Association out of England, and the Holly experiment, where they did a long-term experiment of conventional agricultural, animal agriculture, and organic animal, including livestock. The one was no livestock at all. And they kept meticulous records of the yields and health of everything through that, which I think is, so I was introduced to that type of thing, Rodale and compost science. And so when I went, after I finished that year, I went back to Cornell, and again in my thing, I built a yurt in the Sapsucker Woods, spent $150 on materials and lived in it for the remainder of my time at Cornell, and it's been used actually by many other people since, and I think it's still standing. Which is one of the first yurts built in this country, and we've been involved in yurts and this whole alternative housing and education and everything else. So I took one travel in Europe and stayed at one of the members of the Soil Association, Major Sweeney in Lanfrannoch, Wales, who was a sheep farmer up on the Brecon Beacons, which was common lands and whatnot. And he had interesting approaches to bringing back some of the land, not with plowing and chemicals, but just by mowing and having the sheep on it, and sort of some forward-looking things. Other influences, I think, were books like The Plowman's Folly, Farmers for 40 Centuries, Malabar Farm, and these were all things that I've been reading and getting. So yeah, I finished, I graduated from Cornell with a in general agriculture, with primarily vegetables, fruits, and like spattering of everything, soils and economics and stuff. And I remember times then in the veg crops course where they've, talking of some of these bigger operations and talking about hired, have to hire help and this type of thing. And that was not to my way of thinking, that I would neither a slave nor a master be. So this was fitting into that. And again, my interest was more in homesteading, and I certainly wasn't looking at where I am now actually we've put 2 farms together and whatnot of close to 300 acres. Bulk of it's woods and whatnot, but we've got 50 acres that are in pasture and crops and other things. That wasn't my original intent. I was more doing, craft work and the farming and gardening was sort of a sideline. But that, as we've taken on this stewardship of more land, the farming has become more dominant through this. Yeah, and I guess the other thing, after I graduated from Cornell, I did I was a conscientious objector and did alternative service. I did a few months back at the meeting school where I had been a student. Then the draft board thought that somehow decided that was not appropriate, and I finished out my time at Camp Hill Village in Copake, New York, which is a village, one of the Steiner village organizations, communities, sheltered community for handicapped adults. And so that was eye-opening. Biodynamic farming was what they were doing, and I watched that from the thing. I wasn't totally convinced on it, but certainly organic parts are is closer to what I was trying to do than the chemical farming. And yeah, so I was involved with the farm there. And after that, I got married while I was there, and my wife hadn't finished her undergraduate degree, and we were going back to Cornell for her to finish that after I finished my service. And while there, I was given an opportunity to work as a director of the traveling school exhibits in the Alaska State Museum in Juneau. And so we pulled up stakes, literally, because I had built a portable yurt at this point in a shop course at Cornell, and went to Juneau and worked there. We'd had some Alaska connections. We'd worked at Camp Denali and Denali Park, and Laurel, my wife's folks, had moved to Alaska after she had left. And so that was a long, we were there in Juneau, and it was great getting into this, but I certainly missed the farming and gardening. Juneau is not the best place for, certainly not for farming. It's the sea and mountains and not much in between. And so we certainly thought of Alaska as a possibility, but so while there, we got a call back from the meeting school, wanted to know if we would come back and run the farm program. They were expanding there. And again, my wife hadn't finished her degree, and so we said she wants to finish her degree before we do that. So we took a year for her to go back to Cornell and get her degree, and I was doing craft work and other things while she did that and getting set up at the meeting school. We were at the meeting school and ran the farm and gardens there for 5 years. We lived in our yurt and built yurts for some other students that each faculty had several students living with them in their home situation, and so we had the yurts. And while there, we published the plans for the portable yurt, which I think a lot of the yurts that you see now came, I think, from those plans that we had put together. But my interest was not in getting into the business of building portable yurts for everybody, though I had been involved in other yurts since then. So the meeting school farm was a mixed operation. We had some dairy cows, some beefs, and raised some pigs and chickens and gardens and whatnot. And we did have a pony that we worked with, and I got a team of horses and had students working with them at that point. After 5 years, and our initial family had 2 children at that time, and decided it was another option was needed for our continued life. It's not where we wanted to be forever. And so the family farm that I grew up on was available. My brother had been there for a bit, and my mother had just passed away. But anyway, the farm was available, and so we moved to the farm and in Plastow, New Hampshire, and farmed there for 5 years. Market gardens and hay, and did custom rototilling and other things there. And while we were before that, we had purchased some of the property in Lee, which is now Tuckaway Farm, but it was we weren't ready to move there. There were no buildings or anything else at that point, and so the farm opportunity gave us in Plastow gave us a place to be. And after 5 years, things family dynamics and things changed, and we moved up to Tuckaway and started building the farm here. And over the course of the last close to 40 years, we have added. The part that we bought was a farm that had been divided into 3 parcels, and we were able, through friends and others, to put that, start putting the farm back together again. And partway through, we got it. The neighbor whose land I'd been doing a little farming on and keeping open for him, brush hogging and stuff, decided to sell. It was right at the 2002 time. We're certainly primed for development, and we didn't want that right next to our piece. And so, with great work from my wife, working with many different people in town and other organizations, we're able to put a proposal together to purchase the farm and put conservation easements on that farm and sell the easements on the land that we had. And so we were able, with over a long time, a lot of work on her part, to purchase that land and keep it preserved as open space. And this, again, we tend to get more land, and so more energies are going into the farming and less in some of these other activities. And it was just 2 years ago that we were able to purchase the last piece of the original farm that had the homestead on it. And that is with my son, who's working, and daughter-in-law are here at the farm now, are prime movers on that, and looking to be a food hub and educational conference center type of thing. So we're very pleased with all that that has happened. Groups that I've been working with, again, it was while we were at meeting school that I became involved with NOFA, and when we were in Plasto while there. And then I guess the transition when we moved up to Tuckaway is, I think, when I became president in 1983 of NOFA. But I guess we had one of our students when we were there, Charlie, David Colson, who is now president of the Organic Farmers Association. And he was one of our students, and I guess we must have had some influence on him. And another person in the area is Charlie Nardozzi, that helped us with some of our internship and whatnot, which has been active with Vermont Extension Service over the time. And as I mentioned, my son Dorn and his wife are active with the farm here. He is also director of research at the Wolf's Neck Farm up in Freeport, Maine, which is mostly virtual, particularly the last couple of years, working on soil health and whatnot. He got his PhD in UNH. Well, I mentioned that all of our children. Well, I think we're very blessed. I think with the help of the wife and other things that they involved in Pony Club and violin, and Suzuki violin. My brother, being a violin maker, helped out on that. And they all got into Exeter Academy, and they all got into Cornell. So they've carried through, and good interests and stuff. Our oldest daughter, Annalisa, and her husband now, they farmed here at Tuckaway for close to five years, I believe. And then moved up to Palermo, Maine, where they have Wild Miller Farm right now. And active with NOFA and other pieces. So I feel blessed that the family has carried on, and the other members of the family are certainly carry these same values and concerns, though not actively extensive gardening and farming, but they enjoy the place and the connections. I'm not sure the first date when I was involved with NOFA, but the people that were, Samuel Kamen, who was the prime mover, was there. Paul Dosher was on the board when I was there. Joe White was another member from the Exeter area. I'm forgetting, I'm sure there's many other names that I'm not forgetting, not remembering. But I was just looking back at our record annual letters that we sent out that I noted in 82, I was very active with NOFA. In 83, I was president of NOFA. And again, back there, it was only NOFA, which is it was not Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and the rest of them. So that all came later. And also, I guess I was involved in one of our notes there in 1987. I went to the Small Farmers Conference in Maine, run by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, trying to get feedback from the small farmers and whatnot. So that certainly fit in there. I know we were there, started we had the summer conferences were starting. I don't remember when the first ones were, but I remember there were one at the University of New Hampshire anyway, which was, I think we were here at Tuckaway at that point, which is, UNH is just, the center of the campus is just 3 miles from Tuckaway Farm. So it's been been mixed. We've been certainly connected with a lot of people at the university, but not wanting to be tied to them. A lot of good people there. Now I know that the summer conferences, I think there's a lot of people found as if they were fully involved in, more they were involved in farming, the harder it was to get to a summer conference. And so that I think the conference became a place where the established people were presenters and the newbies sort of came to find out about it. So I think the winter conference, when that, I can't remember when that started, has been more available and certainly been very good. We've enjoyed several of those, the different presenters and whatnot. I think one thing I remember as president of NOFA at that point, that I did not go by Robert's Rules of Order. I preferred to operate more in the Quaker system process of listening and getting consensus on what we should be doing, rather than dividing into sides and who had the most the most votes. And I think it worked quite well. And I think it might even stop for a period if we were having problems and moving forward for a moment of silence to reflect and come up with the best solution that we could have. I've done a lot of things since, so a lot of this is my memory could be jogged, I think, on some of these. I think it's looking in the whole philosophical area of not just farming, but I think looking at the whole social context and whatnot, that that farming is more than just a means of livelihood, but it's a way of life. And I think in looking at these other aspects, that has certainly helped the organization grow, that it's not just, looks at the whole person and the whole society. And I guess they call it a holistic management approach type of thing, that you've got to consider your family and other values and everything else that's going on. And being aware and listening and changing change needs to be made. I think that expanding NOFA to include larger areas, it was originally, Natural Organic Farmers Association. Then I think it was changed to Northeast Organic Farmers Association. And I think they've changed it maybe some other times since, but they've always kept the same acronym for it. But I think being able to reach out and expand to other regions and encourage their own chapters, I think that has been a good way for it to go. I have not been active in the administration or stuff with it. Recently, other things have come forward. I think all in tune with that. I was on the New Hampshire Farm Museum when that was being formed, looking at the heritage back in there. DAPNet, Draft Animal Power Network, in the last 10 years or so, I got back into draft horses again. And that again, an organization that tends to be organic and working the holistic things. I might also say that I have been involved with the Farm Bureau, which in some ways is sort of a tough thing. There's a lot of what they do that I don't think, but the state chapter is working with the state Department of Agriculture and stuff, and is speaking out to one organization, one of the two, I guess. NOFA is speaking out, and Farm Bureau, but I think it was good having some people from the organic movement involved in the Farm Bureau to speak on some of these things. And and I think the National Farmers Union, which is we've been a member of those, and they're much more toward the small farmer than the big corporate organizations. So we've been happy to support those. But I think that that they've been able to NOFA's been able to expand and add different chapters. I think has been very good. I know knowing at one time there was certainly talk of, we need to have a demonstration farm. We need to have a place where people could come and see how it's done. And I guess I wasn't a real supporter of that, because I think basically, who are you going to get to do it, and how are you going to fund it, and this and that and the other thing. And but I think it comes out better if you can have some farmers that people can come and either intern with or have field days, as NOFA has done a number of these. We have had NOFA groups here at Tuckaway and whatnot. I think those are certainly very positive things that can happen, the field days. And but I guess some, how, yeah, I guess it was, I guess if you had someone who come forward and said, well, you know, I want to do it and I can fund it and I can do it, that NOFA could do it. But I think having an organization said, let's see if we can put this together. I didn't see how that was going to work. And the thing I correlate this with is, well, yeah, the meeting school, when it was started by the people who wanted to be there, who wanted to run the school. And they set it up as a 10-year experiment, and it went on for over 50 years. It is now closed, but that farm is now some former students and faculty are on the place, own it, and are running organic farm there. And it's now south of Monadnock community, so the whole community aspect and farm stays together. This in contrast to another Quaker school that the committee wanted to form, and they had numerous problems in their first years of getting the right faculty and stuff and whatnot. It was not as an organic development, and so I sort of shy away from trying to set up something and get something to run if you're not personally going to be there, you know, all the time. Yeah, getting to meet, you know, the people that we've had at conferences and people that have come here to NOFA, come to Tuckaway Farm, and just the contacts we've had through that. So I think it's you know, being able to share Tuckaway with NOFA, I think has been probably some of the best times. And if we can get to other people's places to see what they're doing and to share, that's important. I think it's just getting the idea and validity of organic living out into the public, to letting more people know about it. It has certainly grown. And I think NOFA's probably had a big influence on the whole acceptance of organics and the importance of right caring of the earth, sustainability, and also the information of how to farm organically. What are the principles, and what can you do, what can be done, and what are the alternatives to poisoning the environment. So I think it's you know, that outreach, and it's certainly, I think it's become an accepted organization in the state, where I think in the past it was sort of this fringe thing, but I think it's now much more mainstream. That Whole Foods, organic foods, there's certainly something to it. And I know it's moved over into the restaurant business. We do work with a number of chefs, and we've got a very strong community of chefs in the Seacoast area. And they've been very much involved in looking for alternative sources rather than the big distributors, buying local. They've been providing seed for different varieties that they want to have grown. They say, give you the seed, you grow it, we'll buy it. And I've gotten a number of heirloom crops that I'm growing from seed that they started and wanted. And the main one in that is flint corn that I'm growing, some of the traditional um, corns and Narragansett and Floriani red and Hopi blue and Iroquois black and painted mountain flower corn, and, Roy's callus, name a few. And it's been, you know, it certainly stretched me when they've wanted this of how do you gear up? Because these haven't been grown and processed in this area for a long time. Again, along with small grains that my son has been involved with the grain growers, and, you know, what infrastructure do you need? What tools are available? And again, some of these we have to go to find that China is making the things at the right scale for us, where they're not making them in this country anymore. The machines are just too big here. They're just not made. It'd be nice to see that they were made in this country, but I guess we need a little bit more. But the, well, sort of right scale, I think the DAPNet, the Draft Animal Power Network, is working on this with the draft animals. You're certainly limited to scale, though that's even, some of that's getting bigger with the powered forecarts and whatnot. But still that the Amish and these others, that there are new manufacturing of new implements that are more right scale for a smaller farmer. And yeah, we're looking at how to organize it to, you know, at Tuckaway and others of different, of not wanting to run a big operation ourselves, to hire a lot of people and whatnot, of sort of enterprise partnerships or whatnot that could work. That and particularly in a diversified farm, which is by sort of definition, you have to be organic. You can't be a monoculture. And how does this all fit together? And it gets to be quite a little puzzle, and trying to figure out this. And again, with how can you do the three sisters without having to hand plant everything? And what's the balance and rotations and other things? And well, this gets into, I'm sort of wandering a little bit, but this gets into the whole, soil health thing of minimum tillage, looking at perennial crops rather than annual crops, how you do that, mixing livestock with the with other operations, and I think the idea of no-till was basically built on the using of herbicides, that you didn't have to till the soil to kill the crop that was there, so you could put another one in. And so the alternatives of looking at how we can minimize the tilling or lessening this with the crimpers for rye and other things are some of the approaches. And there's other machines that have been developed that you can plant through stubble and other things that you don't need to till it up. And so there's a lot of area for study and research, and it's been great seeing what's been coming through in the whole Michael Reisel, we're finding out how interrelated different plants are in the fungus and in the soil, and a lot of this, I think, that's been sort of intuited through organic farming, but now getting some real data on just really what is happening or how does it work. And so it's a great more to learn. I think we've got a lot of people to learn from, and to learn just by watching and doing and trying different things, and really being sensitive to what is happening out there. But there's certainly a lot of technical stuff that has to be done. But I think it is the mindset that's needed to prepare to move forward in asking the right questions so that we can have an unpoisoned and safe and regenerative life all around us. And I think that again is coordination, and I think the idea, which again my son Dorn has been involved with the farm hack, which is both high tech adaptations to farm problems, remote sensing and the tools that open and close things so you don't have to be there, and monitoring when you need to water that, but it also in sort of the low tech of some of the small machines that can be made, and it's all based on non-proprietorship. It's open source technology, that everything is open. And I think this is one of the big things that we need to be, I think, certainly basic, I think, to NOFA, and not a real problem for them to understand, is that when we work together, we solve problems better than if we try to compete and see who can get it first and control and not let others go ahead. So I think this open source knowledge and technology is going to be very basic to this, that we're all in this together. We're in one small planet and we've got to maintain it. And so I think solving these problems are going to be the important things to do. And just where NOFA New Hampshire specifically fits in on these projects, I think it's, I think we just have to open ourselves and say, what are our problems and how can we work together to solve these, whether it's, sharing of the land so that the land is used and not, well, several things on the land. One is there's conservation easements so that it is not good farmland and productive land, and well, actually a lot of the unproductive land, which is important for our whole society, is not overdeveloped, is not turned into parking lots and strip malls and many other things. But beyond that, we've been involved very much in this conservation easements with Tuckaway, and now more recently we're looking at the what are they calling it? The
agricultural easements.
Yeah, agricultural easements, and that the land not only if it's sold has to stay in productive agriculture rather than someone buying it and just sitting on it, that it needs to be in the productive thing, and mechanisms to keep it so that farmers can afford to be on that, either in the lease arrangement or purchase arrangement. And so there's some real areas in there that need to be worked on. There's been a lot of Land for Good and others that are working on this, but this is certainly going to be part of it. And I think it's getting the new young people onto the land, and it's both a educating so they can know how to grow, but also the philosophy of what they're trying to do. It's important of understanding, because it's because if you're farming to make money, you're going to be exploiting something, and if you're farming to continue, that's something else. And what was that? Oh yeah, two ways to play games. One way is to play to win, and that's dead-ended. Because once you win, that's it. The other way is to play so that the game will continue. And that's what we need to do, because we're in this game of life. We're living. We want it to continue. It's not end in amassing to winning the game, because you don't want to win. It's like with a good game of soccer. It doesn't matter if you're winning or losing, but you're having a great time playing, if you're all playing well and enjoying it. And I think that's part of what we need. And I see such great problems in our country with, say, oh, gee, we're the greatest country. But when you look at it, the suicides and many other things, that unhappiness and whatnot, that we're not doing things right. And I think it comes into this whole thing of that we're not living in a, I guess, the whole idea of we're sold that we're consumers. And if we see ourselves as consumers, we're on the wrong track. Look up consume in the dictionary, and I think you will find it as one of the most negative terms you could find. But we're not consumers, we're producers, we're growers. Certainly we do consume, but it has to be in a thankful way and giving back and not consuming more than what we need. And I think that's it, and then understanding what it is. If our only, it has to be in the living and not the consuming. That's the important part. And if shopping and whatnot's our recreation, it's not a very healthy one, because there's always something more that you think you need, or you're told that you want. And I think we've got to get beyond that. The important things. Follow your passion. And I think if you're, I think ways will open. I think that's what we've found. And I think, again, it's, I think if you're, certainly as the family that, we've had situations, things have opened, some things have come forward. Some of when we were putting some of this land together, we said, oh, we can't, I don't think we can afford this. And we made an offer that was low, and it was accepted. People sort of felt, that the right things may be happening here. And so I think that's part of what it is. And certainly, it's got to be the process, and it's not clean, easy work, and your hands get dirty, and you get cold and tired, and but there's rewards there well beyond, I think, and I think this is what we need. But I think the rest of society needs to have some sense of this value too, and I'm not sure. I've been, a big thing that a lot of the organic or the farm community is saying, oh, gee, let's see, how can we make it work? How can we make it work? And they get into ag tourism. And I've certainly been not feeling that as a healthy thing, because it should be part of everyone's life that they're involved with the farms. But that may be what we have to do to get people some connection to the farms, is to get them out on it. But it should not be the end in itself. And there's, I'm on the Lee Ag Commission and the Lee Sustainability Committee and other things, and these things come up. And some, resistance to some of this ag tourism if it affects some of the neighbors, but I think maybe could be much less than some of the commercial farms that, if they're spraying pesticides and stuff, could be be more of a hazard, and or if it's that land turns into houses rather than an operating farm of some sort. But I think you just gotta, yeah, do your homework, study, work with other people, keep your eyes open. I think there's opportunities there, and it's again, each one's going to be different. I've heard it said, I think right, that if two farmers are doing farming exactly the same way, one of them is doing it wrong, because each one's situation is different, and you're going to be farming different than someone else for whatever reasons there are. But I think the society is opening up for this. Certainly the eat local, slow foods, and the rest of this is, I think people are starting to feel that there are ways of cooperation rather than competition, I think is the way we have to go. It's force doesn't work, love works. And so I think that's the directions that we have to go. And if you can love your neighbors and love your land and whatnot, it'll come back in like. Yeah, I think NOFA fits, I think has a role, and I think there've been different ideas in the past, and again, it's how much time and whatnot we have to get together, but I think the gatherings and stuff are good. It's certainly been a real problem for the last year and a half, and hopefully that will open up. And but I think it's certainly not having people to reflect and speak what they feel, and not just say, oh, people won't understand me, or they'll ridicule me if I say I'm doing this or that or the other thing. I think you've got to be true to yourself, and hopefully won't put off people. And it's certainly a question of, we want to be friends with everyone, but how do you make someone your friend, I guess, is a part of the problem. Is within the organic community, I don't think there's a problem, but to reach out beyond that to get more people involved in supporting this. Certainly the farmers markets and the CSAs, and I think there's a number of ways that have started and have helped this great deal. Certainly, working with the school lunch programs and restaurants, and that is good. And I think just I'm not sure the best formats. I'm certainly the farm tours and whatnot for open farms and stuff for. And I think there's two levels. One is the general public to understand what's happening on the farms, and I think the other one is a little deeper things where the other people that are involved in this can share knowledge and whatnot. And that we're spiritual beings in a physical body, not just a physical body. We are spiritual beings, and that certainly has to be fed as well as the physical body, and that's all relationship. So certainly getting doing some reading in Native American stuff, particularly braiding sweetgrass and whatnot, covers a lot of these things very nicely. These relationships and reciprocity and receiving and giving gifts. And I guess just, I guess individuals opening up themselves. It doesn't necessarily have to be through a big organization. If you know a few people and they know somebody, and we'll just, let's get together. Yeah, just building community, and you know, not necessarily wait for somebody else to organize it.